Hi, I'm Pamela, and welcome to Greenstick Cottage, where I read and listen to books whenever the cats allow me to. Hopefully, I'm having good luck with my settings and stuff. I recently got this headset, and I'm going to try the mic. I'm going to try it with the headset because I'm thinking maybe the mic will work better than the freestanding mic that picks up all the sounds from the air conditioner and fan. I'm hoping this will work better, so we'll find out. But I have quite a few books to talk about, believe it or not. So I'm going to try to start where I left off last time. And I have finished several books, more than I thought I did. So I was kind of impressed when I counted up how many, or I wrote down all the books. So I was reading last time The Closers by Michael Connelly, which is a Harry Bosch novel. And I really I think that was where he went back, where Michael Connelly went back to third person narrative for Harry Bosch, which I loved a lot more than first person narrative. He did first person for a couple of the novels before this, and I did not like it at all. It didn't feel like Harry. And so anyway, but I liked The Closers, and as usual, I didn't know who done it until the end. So that's one of the things I have really enjoyed with Michael Connelly. I can't remember which number this is in Michael Connelly's books. I think we're up in the high teens now on this. And then the next one I finished was Lincoln Lawyer, The Lincoln Lawyer, which features Mickey Holler. And like I said, I'm just going with all of Michael Connelly's books in publication order. So if he wrote it, I'm reading it. And even though Harry Bosch is not in The Lincoln Lawyer, I really enjoyed it. Now, Lincoln Lawyer is in first person, but I don't mind it in Mickey Holler because this is my introduction to Mickey Holler. So it feels okay to have him in first person since this is my first, experience with him. So I'm used to it. And this one, again, I really enjoyed it. It's different getting the perspective from a defense attorney, which is what Mickey Holler is, than from a homicide detective like Harry Bosch. So you're still getting murder mystery, but you're also getting the whole legal system and all of that and how all that works. And I loved it. I loved Lincoln Lawyer. Now, Those Damned Rebels. I finally finished Those Damned Rebels by Michael Pearson. This was published in the 1960s, and it is the American Revolution from a British perspective, and most of the source material he used, this is a nonfiction book, and most of the source materials he used were British sources because as an established empire at that time, they had plenty of records. They kept a lot of records. Whereas on the American side, it's a fledgling operation at best, and so there's not as much source material, but he did use what he could find, like diaries and letters and things like that. And interestingly, George Washington, he's not a real prominent character in this. Of course, mostly the military that's covered, a lot of it is the British generals. And so you have Burgoyne, you have Cornwallis, but there's Benedict Arnold is in here really kind of more prominent than George Washington or any of the other American uh, soldiers and officers and things. So that was really, I didn't know that much. All I knew about Benedict Arnold was that he was a traitor. So, but I saw how that all came together. So I loved those damned rebels. And the only reason I ever heard of this book was from Ariane at Book Zealots because she has the book and she was planning on reading it. This was a while back, probably at least a year ago, but that's how it got on my radar. So thank you to Ariane for that because I love the book. Next, I read Who Moved My Cheese? And I have to thank Hannah at the Okie Stitcher for sending me this hard copy. And I read this several years ago, and I loved it back then. Then I reread it after I received this, and I loved it again. So this is definitely one to keep on hand. This is by Spencer Johnson, MD. He also wrote, I think he also wrote Peaks and Valleys, which I also really enjoyed. And with the two of those, they give you both books together give a really good, kind of life strategy, and kind of getting your mindset for, I would say, a happier life. That's the way I have experienced it anyway. So Who Moved My Cheese? Great book. Love that one. All right. Also, I finished Maisie Dobbs that I was reading last time by Jacqueline Winspear, and this is the first one in the Maisie Dobbs series. And I had read number 11 in the series called A Dangerous Place. And now I have way more background on Maisie Dobbs, and so I really enjoyed this book. It's not a real, I have to read it and I want to keep reading it till I'm done mystery. But it is a nice, this is set in 1929, but it does flashbacks into her childhood and growing up years and her education and her experiences during World War I. And so anyway, I've really enjoyed it, and I'm very happy. My sister gave me, she gave me the first 6 books in the series, so I'm going to enjoy going through it. I like it. It's very, she's kind of an interesting type of sleuth. These are mystery books, if I didn't mention that. This one takes place in England. And mainly, I think, in the London area and outlying areas. And it's, I like how she solves the mysteries. Let's put it that way. I don't want to give away too much. And I felt a lot of empathy for her with the experiences she had in the war, and subsequent to that. So. Very good book, Maisie Dobbs. And next, I finally finished Saint by Adrienne Young. I love this book cover. I got this as an advanced reader copy. It was a Goodreads giveaway. And so thank you to, who's the publisher on this one? I forgot. Wednesday Books? Macmillan, basically, I think, is the larger company there. But anyway, thank you to them for sending me this advanced reader copy. I loved it. It's a seafaring adventure fantasy novel. And I just love that kind, whether it's real seafaring history or even in this setting of fantasy, I loved it. And it is a prequel to Fable by Adrienne Young, which continues the fantasy. So I'm glad I read this one first before Fable, and because, well, you'll find out later in this episode. I'll talk about Fable, but this one I read for, it would kind of get put on the back burner a lot. And then I finally I was getting so close to the end, I just went ahead and finished it. So, Saint, I liked it. Um, all right, and next was Echo Park, which is the next one after Lincoln Lawyer in the Bosch universe, but it's the next one in publication order for Michael Connelly, and it is a Bosch-centric novel. And he's in a new unit called that. I guess it could be called a cold case unit, but they call it um, open and unsolved unit. And so he's going back quite a way to solve previous. He was on the case that he's trying to solve is a case he was on, I think, at least 10 years before, or maybe more. Might have been 15 or so. And it's one of the cases that has nagged at him because he couldn't solve it. And so the whole trajectory of this book is him trying to solve it with new information. And it was very good, as usual. Michael Connelly writes mysteries well, and I I did not catch on to who done it until the end, which is the usual for Michael Connelly, and why I like him so much, because he keeps me guessing till the end. So before until he reveals who the killer is. So that one was a good one, Echo Park. And then next, I call this my Robinson track, where I am trying to read the Robinson curriculum. Self-learning curriculum is what I think is the actual official name. And it has the core curriculum, the supplemental books, and the historical novels by G.A. Henty, who was a Victorian, he was a wartime journalist, and wrote these novels as well in the Victorian era. So I think he's British, or he was, and I like Henty, and so, so I'm kind of reading a core book, a supplemental book, and then a Henty book, and rotating that way. So in this part of the rotation, I was reading a supplemental book and continuing the Ruth Fielding series. I can't remember which number I should have written that down, what number this is in the Ruth Fielding series. But it is, and I think these books are from the early 1900s. And they're written by, I'll put it up here, Emerson, I think is her name, the author. But this one that I read and finished is Ruth Fielding at Sunrise Farm. And Ruth is an adolescent girl and an orphan who gets, to her great uncle, who then is her guardian. And he's a kind of an old curmudgeon, but with Ruth around, he softens and he loves Ruth, and he takes good care of her, and he paid for her to go to a boarding school, a girls' boarding school, and so so in this particular book, and these are also mysteries. They're not murders necessarily. They're usually not. I can't remember if any of them were so far, but this one definitely was not a murder, but it's a mystery. And it's kind of like, more kind of like Nancy Drew, or but older than that because it's in the earlier 1900s. So it's quite quaint and sweet um, and but at the same time kind of it keeps me curious, and I might be able to figure out the mystery before the end. But it always has a good. The books always have a good ending, um, and it's just so easy to like the characters, except for the actual villain, if villain or villains in the book, and just how life was like in that what I think of as a more pleasant time frame. And especially in the country like this one was set. So I'm enjoying. I just call them all the Robinson books, and I'm really enjoying those. So I'm trying to keep one of those on my Kindle at all times. And so currently, or that's the one I just finished, was Ruth Fielding at Sunset Farm. Sunrise Farm. Let me see. I'm sorry, it's Sunrise Farm. Oh, and this one took place over 4th of July. So that was interesting too, how 4th of July was celebrated back then. All right, and next one I finished was The Overlook, which is the next Bosch novel by Michael Connelly. And this is the first one. I think this one is number 18 of his books, maybe 19, maybe, yeah, somewhere in there, high teens. This is the first Connelly book where I guessed at least one of the whodunits, rather, earlier in the book than I've ever done before. Just still, I think I was still in the first half when I suspected, who I suspected, and it turned out I was right for a change. So I was pretty excited. Oh, I finally guessed a Michael Connelly whodunit, so I was really excited about that. And that one, again, that was not one of the open unsolved or cold cases. That was a current case, I think, and Bosch was back on he's on another unit called Homicide Special or something like that, where they, on the more, I think they handle the more complicated cases, or more touchy cases maybe. And anyway, again, I like Michael Connelly books. So that was The Overlook. Next, I finished Fable. Now, and I read Saint, in the print, but I listened to Fable. So Fable is book 1. I think it's called the Narrows series by Adrian Young. And I did not enjoy it as much as Saint. I got to say that much. But I did enjoy it. And it's the next generation down from Saint. So some time, has passed. Fable I'm thinking she's an older adolescent. It doesn't really say what her age is. But, again, the beautiful book cover, these are great book covers. Saint looks like this, and then Fable. Hopefully I'll get the Fable picture up here. Beautiful cover art. I love the art on these. And again, it's much seafaring and, ports and danger and adventure, excitement, suspense, and great fantasy novel. So, and no real stoppers in there. Unfortunately, I wanted to go right on to the next book, which is called Namesake, but Libby, my library does not have it on Libby, and then I looked it up to see if they had it in print, and they don't. So I'm going to have to put that on my look for list, keepsake. And so that's it. So those are all my most recent finishes. I do have a couple of DNFs that happened during this time. One was Serum, and I talked about that one last time. I think it was a listen, and it was about a 46-hour listen. I had listened to 15 or 16 hours at when I talked about it last. I didn't get much farther than that when I came to, I'm just going to call it molestation in the monastery. That was too far for me. I'm done. I'm over. So that was the DNF point for me. I don't want to read about anything like that in the past or in the present. Of course, it's a novel. It's nonfiction. But I just don't want to read about things like that. So that was a DNF. The other one, I was reading a book called, and I read this book back in the 90s, I believe. And it is by, Serum is by Edward Rutherford, if I didn't say that. Well, it probably shows on the picture. But that was a listen, and I just stopped listening and returned it to the library, on Libby. And so I read this book by Harry Turtledove called How Few Remain, which is I think it's the first novel. I don't remember the name of the series, but it's a series where it's an alternate history series where the Confederate States of America won the war in 1862. So the war did not go until 1865 in this alternate history. And Harry Turtledove is a historian. He's a history professor. So he writes alternate history pretty well because of how well he knows the actual history. And according to him, if this one thing, it was a messenger I think it was Stonewall Jackson, sending a message for reinforcements or something, and the messenger got captured by the northern troops, and the message didn't get through, and he didn't get his reinforcements, and so to Harry Turtledove, that was a turning point in the war, whereas if he had gotten through, then that battle would have been won, and they already had the momentum in 1862 that they could have won the war, according to him. So that's how that's the premise he built the series on. And so How Few Remain, you're picking up in 1870 something, 71, I think, 1871. And so the CSA is its own country, and it purchased the western states of Mexico, the northwestern states, so that they could become a coast-to-coast country, the CSA. The USA did not like that, and they said, if you go through with this, if you blah, 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 we're going to declare war on you. So they go back. They're back, they're at war again. And there are several people, like Lincoln is still alive at this time. Teddy Roosevelt factors in. Custer is there, is in the story. Mark Twain is in the story, and Jeb Stuart. He's in charge of those Mexican states that they purchased, and Geronimo is in the story. It was so good. It was so good for a while until it had to get, raw, as an older female relative of mine used to call it. It was just too raw, she would say. And I don't want to hear details about, I might have talked about this one in a previous video. I don't remember, but I'm talking about it again just to be sure. But I was able to continue when it got too graphic with a bedroom scene with Mark Twain it's Samuel Clemens in this backstory. Um, with he and his wife, and you know, that was that was not, that was kind of ick. Some things just need to be private, and but at least they were married, and I kind of just went on. Then we get to Custer cheating on his wife. That's not, and that's graphic as well. And then him hugging and kissing his wife right after he's been with the paramour. Not doing that. So that was the end for me. That was the DNF on that one. So that was a disappointment because I loved the book otherwise, and but I just couldn't continue after that. So those were my DNFs, my recent DNFs, and now I'm currently reading the 12-week year. Well, I'm listening to the 12-week year. Oh man, I should have written down the. I've got it somewhere here. Brian P. Moran is the author. I'm really liking this. I'm taking it in little short bites. It's short chapters. And I'm listening to it first thing in the morning after prayers and meditation. Then I do the 12-week year. And the chapters are usually 5 minutes or less. So I can kind of chew on that information for the remainder of the day. And it does come, the Audible version I got does come with a PDF with some diagrams and tables and charts and things. And I really like the concept of condensing goals down to 12-week goals, and, figuring out systems to achieve those goals. And so far, I'm kind of in the first half of the book where it's kind of showing how, just kind of giving an overview of the whole concept and why things like this work, and and the tendencies of people to do this instead of that. And I'm always fascinated with anything that has that talks about human behavior, essentially. So it gives me insight to myself and to others, helps me understand people better, and hopefully understand myself well enough to, try these different things. And then the next part of the book, I think, is going to get into the specifics of how to put it in, the 12-week year concept into action. So I'm looking forward to that so I can give it a try. So 12-week year. And then my current Michael Connelly book is The Brass Verdict, which is the second Mickey Holler book. Mickey Holler being the defense attorney, the criminal defense attorney. And Bosch is in this book. I'm not going to do any spoilers about who Mickey Holler is, other things that, in other words, I know things about Mickey Holler that he doesn't know. And like I said, Mickey Holler narrates the book is written in first-person narrative, and this is an audiobook that I'm listening to. So it's, anyway, I'm enjoying it again. And it's, there's some time, at least a year or more has passed since the Lincoln Lawyer book, before this book starts, The Brass Verdict. So looking forward to hearing more about on this book. Another book I recently started is called The Big Picture by Sean Carroll, who's a physicist. And this is about, I think the rest of the title says something about the origin of meaning and life in the universe or something like that. And so he started out just kind of with a broad brush, about the universe and physics and things like that, which I have a hard time grasping physics in some cases, but so I'm always looking for ways, I like trying different authors who can maybe explain it in a way that's easier for me to understand. So I'm, anyway, so far so good. I'm very early in the I think I've only gotten through the first chapter or something. So I have great expectations. I hope the book meets those. I'm continuing in the Encyclopedia of Lost and Rejected Scriptures, which is a long-term read on my Kindle, on my old Kindle. It's still on my old Kindle. I'm in 4 Maccabees now. So I usually read a chapter a day out of this book, and because it is, it's apocrypha, and I don't even know how to say the word, pseudepigrapha. And so these are all these are non-canonical scriptural writings, I guess you could call them. So it's very interesting getting these other perspectives. I've read the Book of Enoch and lots of other non-biblical books in this huge volume. I think I'm in the 74% mark or something, somewhere in the 70s. So I've still got a ways to go. But taking that little bite at a time works out well for me. So after I finished Ruth Fielding at Sunrise Farm, I went on to the next G.A. Henty book, historical novel, which is called At Agincourt. Agincourt. French speakers can probably tell me how to pronounce that properly. But hopefully you could see it in print if I put the picture of the book cover on there. And so I'm in chapter 2 on this one, so very early on. But what I really appreciate about Henty is his detail. I've been reading his books in historical. I don't know what the publication order is, but I did find a list of these books in historical order because they're all historical novels. So it starts in ancient Egypt. His books start with the Cat of Bubastes, probably not pronouncing that correctly either. But Moses is in that book. So that's quite a ways back. And then it just comes forward. And I believe this current one at Agincourt is 1300s, I think. Is that when the battle happened? I think maybe 1400. It might be early 1400s. But anyway, he has kind of a formula with his historical novels. They're adventure novels for boys. So there's usually an adolescent boy as the main character, but this adolescent boy, many times encounters real historical characters that are characters that we know, or if we study the history of that time and place, we would know. And so that's the formula happening here. And there is a noble who has an estate in England, and he also has an estate in France. And that was pretty common among the nobility at that time. And so there's problems going on. The Duke of Burgundy murdered the Duke of Orleans. My French is not that good. And so there's been repercussions of that, and there's stuff going on, rumblings of discontent and possible future conflict, which is why Aylmer, the noble here, goes to France and takes a bunch of his men-at-arms and archers with him to kind of, hang out at his estate and be there to protect his estate if anything, if there's any kind of, uh, you know, untoward events happen, that happen to happen. He doesn't want his estate to get caught up in it. And so the young man, I think, is his son, Guy in French, or Guy in English, Guy. And so it's just kind of barely setting it up with the trip to France, which, is not that, it's just crossing the channel and then it's in that province right there across the water. So I love the Henty books because they usually have a lot of, they have a lot of adventure and warfare and exciting things. You're kind of sometimes in suspense, and so it's anyway. I am enjoying them, and it doesn't have to be just for adolescent boys because I love his books. All right, but this is probably of my current reads. This is probably the one that tempts me the most to just keep reading, and that is Ripper by Patricia Cornwell. And this is her, I guess this is the 2017 version, which is revised and expanded or whatever from I think it was a 2002, the original book she wrote, and it had a different title like Jack the Ripper or something. But anyway, this lays out her, she investigated everything she could find, and this is her, where she lays out her case for who she thinks Jack the Ripper was. And she thinks it was Walter Sickert, who I had never heard of before reading this book. I might be close to halfway. I can't remember, but it's pretty compelling. But as far as her case goes, but like I said, I didn't even know who Walter Sickert was, but he's apparently a well-known artist in England. He was born in Germany, but moved to England with his family as a child. But he could speak multiple languages, and he was a well-educated man. He was apprenticed to Whistler, the artist. He became an artist. He was also an actor before his association with Whistler. And while it's interesting to see all her evidence and her making her case for her belief that Jack the Ripper was Walter Sickert. But to me, that's secondary to all the history of of crime and law, police stuff and all that kind of stuff of the Victorian era, of the time frame where the Ripper murders happened. So all the history, and also the scientific things that they can still do today on the evidence that still exists from these cases. One of the things I was most amazed by is how much you can tell from a piece of paper. She hired a paper expert. I had no idea. I knew they could tell watermarks and things like, that kind of stuff. What I didn't know, and what this guy can do, is he can tell the paper, he could tell what fibers the paper is made out of, and the mesh pattern on the fibers, because I guess the paper fabric, so to speak, dries in these wire mesh something or other at that time. I don't know if it's done the same way today, or if he was just talking about the late 1800s, because the they call it the canonical five murders that happened in 1888. I think they were all in 1888. But that's another thing. Cornwell, she believes there were murders before the canonical five and after. And she makes her case for that as well. But this paper expert just fascinated me because it's not only that, but how these paper sheets are cut and how you can tell, match cuts and to see if, so this was all to examine all the letters claimed to be written by Jack the Ripper, and that were all very taunting to law enforcement. And they had caricatures, drawings and things on there. But this paper expert, he could compare this paper to that paper to see if they came from the same, what is it called, the big sheet of paper, quattro or something. Anyway, all the science stuff was just fascinating. They even tried to do DNA, and also the way they did, they preserved some of this evidence. They laminated it, so they even to try to get DNA, they had to kind of, they had to get permission, all kinds of permission to examine these things and peel back the acetate to try to get a DNA sample on envelopes and stamps and whatnot. And so, all that stuff I've just been finding fascinating. Walter Sickert, was an actor and an artist, so, and multilingual, and so he was good with changing his appearance and his, the way he talked and wrote, and so she makes a pretty good case, but she admits we'll probably never know because so much of the evidence has been lost or destroyed because of the way it was handled back in, late Victorian England. So that was sad. It's sad to contemplate. But she makes her case that he would have been caught if he had been committing these crimes in the 20th century or 21st century. At least more in our lifetime, he probably would have been caught with all the technology we have now. And he was, and that, I guess, I don't know if this phrase originated with Jack the Ripper, catch me if you can, but I guess that was on his letters to the police and the journalists and stuff back in, he wrote to the newspapers and the police and would taunt them with that, catch me if you can. So he was, quite the psychopath. And so that's Ripper. So that one's hard to put down, but I do switch it up. And so the other book that I am reading is, by the way, if this used to be called a bookmate, anyway, it holds my book, and you can, anyway, I'll just talk about the book. But if anybody knows where to get these bookmate book covers, please let me know, because I don't know where to get them. I don't know if they're even being manufactured anymore, but they're great because it's got a built-in bookmark, and you can put the strap around, this clear strap around here, and then you can easily hold a paperback this size with one hand, so it's a lot easier to read with these. So I'm on chapter 11 of this number 2 book of the Maisie Dobbs series called Birds of a Feather by Jacqueline Winspear. And I'm really enjoying this one just like I enjoyed the first one. Again, it's kind of, this is this is at the beginning of the Depression. And so there's a lot of hard times going on, and you're getting that kind of in the periphery of the case she's working on. And she combines psychology with sleuthing. And that's what's so interesting about the way she solves the crimes. She's very empathic, I guess. She can um, she works well with others, let's put it that way. And so she learns a lot from people because of how she relates to them. So I find that super interesting. So birds of a feather, and I'm getting close to the halfway point here. So I'm enjoying that one. So those are all the books I'm either reading or listening to. Um, Ripper is on my Kindle, my new Kindle. I try to keep at least one book on, each device I have, plus whatever physical books I have. In addition to reading and listening, I am sticking with my crossword puzzles. This one book, it is so torn up because I take it with me whenever I think I might have to wait somewhere. And I am on puzzle 101. I think there are 111 in this book. Yeah, 111. And so I've been in the hard section for quite a while, and they are hard. They are hard. Much more difficult than the easies and the mediums. And sometimes I kind of get like, I'm like, really, you're kind of stretching it to give that clue for that particular, word. They try to trick you a lot, but it's a nice brain exercise to work on these. And I'm also trying to get through my magazines. I'm currently reading this one, McCall's, this is Better Homes and Gardens, American Patchwork and Quilting. Not thrilled with the cover quilt there, but and I'm kind of early in this, but this one has, for anybody who enjoys quilting, this has quite a in-depth piece on primitive gatherings in Larson, Wisconsin. So it has a lot of beautiful pictures like this. So and they have retreats there and everything. Anyway, I've really been enjoying. I enjoyed that article a lot. And I haven't really found it so far. I'm not very far into the magazine, but I haven't found any quilt I would want to make yet. So, but I usually find at least one in every quilting magazine I go through. So we'll see what else this magazine holds. And then the next one I'll be moving on to is my Just Cross Stitch magazine. Oops. Yeah, I probably shouldn't be showing that. But yeah, I subscribe to this one. So that's it for this episode of my BookTube meanderings and chatting. So I hope you're having great reads and listens and enjoying yourself. And thank you very much for watching, and I'll talk to you next time.